Morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session for Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. Commissioner Carolina Mejia is here and Commissioner Edwards is right about to walk in the door. I see him. And we have YouTube, Thurston County YouTube channel where you can follow a live stream or join a conference call by calling 360-252-9020, pin 1234. We also have County Manager Ramiro Chavez present and a number of staff members that we'll get to in due course. 9:02 a.m. and first item on the agenda is our weekly COVID-19 update. I see Shelley Slaughter from Public Health and Dr. Abdul Malik, the County Health Officer. I'll turn it right to Shelley.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Commissioners. I have some encouraging news to share this morning for once. It is day 363 of our COVID-19 pandemic emergency. In Washington state, there have been 313,335 cases of COVID-19 since the pandemic began, with 4,318 Washingtonians who have lost their lives. Here in Thurston County, our case counts stand as of yesterday at 6,466 cases of COVID-19 in Thurston County since the pandemic began, with 63 people losing their lives, unfortunately, with another death that occurred yesterday. 333 Thurston County residents have been hospitalized. 5,018 Thurston County residents have had COVID-19 and been released from isolation or quarantine. Our current positivity rate is 7.4%, which is good news. That's going down a bit. And we have had 45 congregate care outbreaks, with 6 that we are currently investigating. Here in the Western region, our hospital capacity stands at 86.3% of our beds occupied, which is fairly typical for our region. And just again to share, the West region includes Thurston, Lewis, Pacific, and Grays County, per the governor's most recent roadmap to recovery regions. Back to hospital capacity, 12% of those acute staffed beds are occupied by people with COVID-19 at this time, and 15.3% of ICU beds are occupied by COVID patients. The governor made some changes to the roadmap to recovery metrics last week, as you know, requiring that regions meet just 3 of 4 metrics. And good news, that meant that Thurston County moved to phase 2 as of yesterday, which means more services are available at a little bit higher level capacities. And we still encourage people to please do everything that they can to prevent COVID, including wearing your mask, washing hands, covering cough sneezes, and maintaining 6 feet physical distancing from people and avoiding crowds. In terms of our vaccination data, just wanted to share a few things. Statewide, 728,636 doses in Washington state have been administered, which raises Washington's administration to 70.78% of doses of all doses delivered, which is good news. That has increased a lot. And here in Thurston County, 21,182 doses of vaccine have been administered, and 3,282 people have received both doses now. So that's great. We're making a lot of progress there.
Can you repeat the last number of how many have received the second dose?
3,282.
Oh, thank you.
In the last week at Public Health and Social Services, we are also one of many authorized vaccine providers in Thurston County. and we received 800 doses for our allocation last week. How those were administered were 88 went to a senior living community, 54 went to adult family homes in mobile clinics in partnership with EMS Medic One, where we were able to serve people in adult family homes who would not otherwise be able to access vaccine. And over 2 clinics, 415 people who either were 1A in the healthcare worker category or in 1B over age 65 or living in a multi-generational household had the opportunity to receive vaccines who were not otherwise able to access other appointments. So these are people that either called because they needed assistance or because they tried to get into a previous clinic with another provider and weren't able to. So we were really fortunate and so delighted to be able to conduct those clinics and serve more of our residents with vaccine. And we plan to continue that and open more as we have vaccine supply available. And this week we are scheduled to receive 1,500 doses at Thurston County Public Health. Unfortunately, one of our primary partners, Providence, did not receive an allocation this week, and we had a large event schedule, and we were able to allocate 1,000 of our doses to ensure that drive-through clinic scheduled goes on for this weekend. Registration opened for that, and unfortunately, it was filled within 20 minutes. And we know that that is so frustrating for people who are really wanting access to vaccine. The remainder of our doses this week will serve seniors at the Lacey and Olympia Senior Centers through a partnership that we have developed with them, as well as some mobile clinics to our houseless populations and other 1A remaining workers. We, again, in Thurston County are getting out 100% of the doses that we receive each week and have had 0 wastage. And with that, I will pause and pass it over to Dr. Abdelmalek to share anything further that I may have missed.
Good morning, commissioners. We're actually seeing some encouraging news in Thurston County. Our community transmission rate for the county is 251.2 cases per 100,000 population over the past 14 days. This is definitely downtrending, and I'm continuing to monitor our transmission rates closely. Being able to transition and meeting the criteria for the transition into phase 2 is also encouraging. However, I would like to echo Shelley's reminder to everyone in our community to mask, distance, stay home when you're sick, and try to keep ourselves and our community as healthy as possible as more services and opportunities become available. My hope is that with all of these preventative measures in place, along with vaccine, that we're really starting to see the beginning of a safe return to public life. But it'll only work if we all continue to practice COVID safety measures that we've been doing since the pandemic began. And with that, thank you, and I'm open to any questions.
Okay, great. I'll ask the board, and just with the recognition that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ramiro, that the county manager's got about an hour of conversation on Thursday for the board set aside regarding vaccines. So
yeah, that is correct, Commissioner, because it seems to me that a 5-minute conversation, questions and answers may not do the service to the board and the board members how they'd like to get information. So on Thursday morning, 10 o'clock, I have reserved an hour to go through all the questions you may have, specifically related to vaccination, the vaccination clinics, some of the challenges that we are receiving. Although Shelley in her statement briefly breezed through that really underscores the issue that we have in terms of supply. Providence was organizing this clinic at the Rock, I believe, for this weekend. And it's been in the planning for the last 2-3 weeks. And for Providence not to receive any allocations of vaccination this week, it really underscores, I believe, the issues that we have and the challenges that we have in the supply of vaccines. So anyways, I just want to frame that as a matter of conversation that we perhaps we need to dig deeper on Thursday morning.
Okay, so understanding that, does the board have any hot topics that they'd like to address in our sort of brief update this morning? I'll start with Commissioner Mejia.
So I just wanted to ask an update on the new strain. Do we know any information yet on whether it's come to Thurston County? I saw that it hit King County. Dr. A?
So we do not have any confirmed cases at this time of any of the new strains, but it is because these strains are more readily transmittable. I believe that it's a matter of time before we pick it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Edwards.
I'm going to ask a question here, but maybe for an in-depth answer might take maybe on Thursday, I suppose. But I wonder, as we move forward with this is a flu, apparently, this COVID, corona, this issue that we're dealing with. And so this one is has more hazardous, detrimental effects with folks. But are we in a situation where every year from now on, we're going to have a flu season and it's going to bring this around? Because it's almost like we're acting like, well, if people get a vaccine, it's like the polio or the measles or something. It's going to be gone and they're not going to have to deal with it. When in reality, it seems like we're going to have to continue preventative measures annually until what? Till herd immunity, or until we don't have the detrimental impact from this flu? What is going to happen there? And we don't seem to be, I know we're wearing masks, social distancing, and all that kind of stuff, but there are other preventative measures that are out there, or supposedly preventative measures that are out there that we never talk about. Whether that's just overall wellness, make sure you don't get stressed out, get enough rest, take your vitamins, eat properly. You see where I'm kind of going with this? What's down the road once we get this thing under control? And maybe it'll be such a thing that we'll need a little more time. So if you think that's the case, let me know.
Thank you, Commissioner. To be honest, we are not sure, and the scientific community isn't sure what is down the road. I know that right now with the new strains, we're looking at the efficacy of our current vaccine against those new strains. And I know that the companies, Moderna and Pfizer are looking at if a booster shot or a booster vaccine may be needed addressing the specific strains. In terms of mutations, we are seeing mutations now, but a lot of the reason why we're seeing it now is because transmission rates are so high. And so once fewer people are infected, then that provides the virus less opportunity to mutate. So while I have great hope that we will be able, with a combination of distancing measures and vaccines, to bring COVID-19, to bring the pandemic under control, exactly what form that would take and if and when boosters are needed, it just isn't known at this time. But it's definitely something that we're all thinking about. Both in the, epidemiology world, as well as in the vaccine manufacturer world and the public health world.
Okay. I think we'll hear more about that on Thursday.
Okay, very good. Just a quick question. I heard last night that the nationally, the vaccine availability is moving up, and there, we were at like 1 million shots a day, and now we're at like 1.4 million shots a day. And I guess I'm just wondering, when Shelley reports on the, we got 800 doses, and now we're getting 1,500 doses. Is that? I mean, I don't have a calculator in front of me. Is that work out to the? Is that our proportion of what 1.4 million shots a day would calculate out to, divided by the number of counties in America or whatever? I mean, is that, or are we having some, I guess what I'm asking is, are we having any additional problems regarding obtaining vaccine supply on top of just the general national lack of supply?
So I know that we're working really closely with the Washington State Department of Health, and it's not strictly population based, although that plays a significant role. It has to do with the number of enrolled providers, type of providers, and there are a lot of different measures that the state balances with our state allocation of COVID-19 vaccine, which did increase last week. The other thing is that when the state looks at overall vaccine allocation, they're allocating across the state. So that includes the mass vaccination sites that they're setting up, as well as county and local health, so clinics, local pharmacies, and local hospitals, and they're balancing all of those things in allocation.
Okay, so if they were doing it only by population, and I were to calculate out, do you have a sense of like how many doses just based on pure population we would be getting as a proportion of Washington's allocation?
So we would be looking at about 5,000 doses a week.
Okay.
About.
Okay, thank you.
And for reference, the previous week, we got around a total of 2,000 to our Thurston County providers. And this week that went up to be a little bit closer to roughly around 4,000. Is that about right?
Yeah, it's a little bit over 4,000. Yeah.
So not enough for our Thurston County community yet, but we really hope to see that increase soon.
And I would
I'll just repeat what you said, which is that some of this is like, well, I know there was a mass vaccination site in Clark County. We don't have that in Thurston. So it's not going to be one-to-one. I'm not saying that it should. I just wanted to have a sense of it. So I appreciate that.
I did want to say that we are collaborating with Department of Health that are also doing vaccination, that have provided some vaccination support as well in our county, and are collaborating with us, especially, and we're currently moving forward on a further collaboration on adult family homes as well going forward. So there's other vaccine that's not directly allocated to us that's being used to vaccinate folks in Thurston County who might also have limitations on access.
Ramiro.
And I know we are going to get a little bit deeper into the conversation of vaccination on Thursday. But just for the viewing public, to put in perspective, although we have seen an increase in allocations of vaccines this week, close to 4,000, right now, Thurston County residents eligible under the phases there currently are is 70,000. So that gives you a perspective that although the vaccine allocation keeps increasing, but the sheer nature of those individuals who are eligible for vaccination is 70,000. So we'll continue to have that struggle. Now you understand the frustrations that we have received on emails as well as phone calls from citizens, because as soon as a clinic opens, all the slots are taken. So I just want to put in perspective the number of citizens, Thurston County residents who are qualified for vaccines.
Thank you, Ramiro.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. Okay, thank you. We'll see you Thursday morning then. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Okay, number 2 on the agenda is homeless strategies update, and looking for, yes, there she is, Keely Marino, our homeless coordinator. Keely, I'm sure you have a report at this point.
I do. Good morning, Commissioners. Keely Marino with Public Health and Social Services. I am imagining we can spend some time my update today talking about the events that happened on the 31st of January in downtown Olympia at the Red Lion / Governor Hotel. What I understand really briefly what happened is there's a group, an advocacy group here in Thurston County called Ole Housing Now. Ole Housing Now is also supported by Tacoma Housing Now, which is a similar group up in Tacoma that carried forth a similar action in Fife at a hotel. So on Sunday afternoon, I received a text message from a community member about the press release that they had put on Facebook. And I forwarded that immediately to our Director of Public Health, Shelley Slaughter. And I determined with her guidance to go down and just connect with those individuals and see. One, I'm very familiar with the homeless crisis response system, so I wasn't clear on who these individuals were. So I did go down and speak with them really briefly and listen to what it was that they were asking for. And then also spoke with one of the members, organizing and supporting members of the Tacoma Housing Now. From that, I came back and followed the events as everyone else probably did on Sunday, leading to the evacuation and some arrests of some of the advocates that were at the hotel on late Sunday night. Since that time, our office has been working with Kurt Hardin and Brandon Weber and finance staff and Robin Campbell on looking into the FEMA and how the FEMA funds could be used. FEMA, on January 21st, President Biden did sign an executive order that stated that 100% of FEMA funding going towards homeless response could be reimbursed. So we wanted to look into that. That was new. That it's just about 10 days old at this point, and definitely a focal point on some of the demands that came from Ole Housing Now. So we're happy to report on those findings. Otherwise, I did also go down to the Governor Hotel and speak to the general manager yesterday and just check on him and his staff. He did state that his staff are pretty rattled, as is he. And so we just had a conversation about what kind of support, how things are going for him, how he was feeling impacted by that day. And then yesterday, I was able to participate in a press conference with City of Olympia staff as acting chief Jelsic, Keith Staley, assistant city manager, and myself gave an update to some local press on the activities of that day.
And you did an excellent job on the press conference, Kelly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm happy to take any further questions, but that's a really brief overview.
Commissioner, if we could probably give us the time to elaborate on the FEMA funding.
Absolutely. We have Robin Campbell, Kurt Hardin, and Tom Webster on the call to help.
Attached in your packet, there is an outline of what the staff has prepared for you this morning. And it's titled FEMA Public Assistance Funding, Availability for Housing Assistance. It was developed in the last 24 hours, as you can imagine, and it was a team effort. So I'm going to briefly walk you through, for the benefit of the public, going to read you a couple of statements of this briefing, and then I will ask Robin to follow up with the specifics, if I may. So as Kelly stated, on January 21st, President Biden issued an executive order, a memorandum to extend federal support to governors' use of the National Guard to respond to COVID-19 and to increase reimbursement and other assistance provided to the states. Two key components of this order. One, FEMA shall make available under the Public Assistance Program such assistance as may be required to provide for the safe opening and operations of eligible schools, child care facilities, healthcare facilities, non-congregate shelters, domestic violence shelters, transit systems, and other eligible applicants. Such assistance may include funding for the provision of personal protective equipment and disinfecting services and supplies. The second key element of this order includes FEMA shall make assistance under this section available at 100% federal cost share until September 30th, 2021. So on your paper, there is a lot of, perhaps as any federal mandate comes nuances within. So I just, and Robin is probably walk you through here in a minute, but I just want to state the fact that the county continues and will continue to find ways to fund and bring assistance, federal assistance, state assistance, and local assistance, financial assistance, to deal with the impacts of the pandemic. So, and this is an opportunity. There's a lot of questions before us that we'll continue to explore. And I was just going to leave it right there if Robin wants to elaborate on the rest of the outline that has been provided to you this morning.
Thank you, Romero. That's a pretty good opening to what we know about the FEMA public assistance funding for this purpose. And we don't know a lot.
Your volume your volume is low. Can you increase the volume of your microphone, please?
Is this better?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
A little better. Okay, I'll try to speak a little louder too. So right now, what I was saying is we do not know a lot about this particular funding stream. The president just signed the order on January 21st, and the what we know about FEMA is normally it is a 75% federal share, and the president's order says 100, and that is a conflict with federal law. So there are attorneys who are working to deconflict the executive order with existing law, and then provide guidance to the states and local government. We are waiting on that guidance as this paper outlines. We have questions for FEMA that they're not able to answer yet. One of those questions is how do we obtain the funding? So at this point in time, we are waiting for further guidance from the feds.
So just one additional point, if I may, as I mentioned, we are and we continue to look for ways to get funding, in this case, FEMA funding. Well, back in July 1st, 2020, Dr. Abdelmalek signed a letter to FEMA that states the need to support congregate and non-congregate sheltering options or temporary care centers as part of the public health response to address the pandemic. So that the need has already been highlighted for over 7 months. It will maybe, depending on what we find in terms of the additional guidance, we may want to encourage Dr. Abdelmalek to revisit that letter and update the letter. But again, the point that I want to make is we have already made a point of the need for the last few months for FEMA to support. Now this creates another opportunity which is yet to be explored.
And I would also add that even though we've known that FEMA funding was available to support the pandemic, like so many aspects of COVID response support, those rules around that funding have been changing. And to date, the county has not had any expenses that are eligible for FEMA claim. So part of what we're waiting for is guidance on exactly what it is we can claim. And in the meantime, as Romero said, we're looking at other funding opportunities for everything that we're doing in the pandemic response.
Okay, are we ready for questions from the board, Romero?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. I'll start with Commissioner Mejia.
Yes, thank you. My first question is in regards to, I know we already worked with the Red Line downtown and Family Support Center to house some families. And I just want to make sure that that relationship wasn't damaged because of this. And I'm not sure if Keely, since you had a chance to speak with him, how does he feel about it?
What I can say is that in our conversation with the general manager, and I was with Teal Russell from the city of the other homeless coordinator, he was feeling really tired and a little discouraged about his staff. What I do know is that they will be sending the City of Olympia's crisis response unit, I believe, or some city staff will be extending critical incident teams out to the staff to ensure that they get some support and help for any emotional turmoil that they experienced. From what I heard anecdotally, they did take another individual that was referred from the crisis response unit yesterday evening. So I think that we're in good standing with the general manager, and I'll continue to work on that relationship and ensure that he feels as supported as we can.
Thank you.
Commissioner, is that it?
Yes,
Commissioner.
sir.
Okay, Commissioner Edwards.
How many dollars did we allocate to be spent for housing in the 2020 cycle, including commerce? And I mean, you don't have to have I don't have to have an exact amount, but I'm just kind of curious. I know part of the news coverage was like nothing was being spent on this. I believe there's quite a few dollars being spent, either local, state, Department of Commerce, housing, federal dollars. Isn't it a lot? I'm not saying it's adequate even. I don't know. But isn't it a lot of money that we're spending on this during the 2020 cycle already? And we've got the similar activity coming up in 2021.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Edwards. In the news conference yesterday, I reported that we spent over $12 million in affordable housing and homeless response in 2020, and on top of that, around $4.8 million in rental assistance. And we are heading into another funding cycle here this next month.
Yeah, and that is a good point because related to the rental assistance and utility assistance, the board supported $4.8 million in 2020. You took an action 2 weeks ago to allocate, I believe, $350,000 to build a bridge on the particular program to continue to support rental and utility assistance until the new federal funding is coming. We have been awarded close to $8 million for new funding to rental assistance, and that is coming. That is going to be able to help Thurston County residents through the end of 2021. So if you look at the dollars and cents in 2020, potential in 2021, it's significant. And you are on point, Commissioner Edwards. There's not going to be enough. There's never enough because the issue is very complex. And we will continue to find ways to continue to support the needs of our community based on the resources that we have.
A follow-up question to that. Is the rental moratorium going to be up at some point, or has that been extended?
Yes, the eviction moratorium at this point federally and in Washington state has been extended to the 31st of March of this year at this point.
Okay. Getting back to that hotel takeover down there, who paid the initial renting of those rooms? I don't know, I guess there was 15 rooms or something that the group maybe rented, is that right? Or did they give money to individuals and they individually rented them? Or was it all put on one credit card, or somebody walk in there with a bucket of cash, or how'd that take place?
My understanding is that 17 rooms were paid for by a member of that organization. So on Saturday, they came in, and I don't know if they came in or called, and reserved 17 rooms and paid for it on their credit card.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So my question, I have kind of two buckets of questions. One is about like what happened exactly, because I didn't hear any real detail in terms of how many people were there, you know, and other than trespassing, like what other people were arrested? You said. So I'm wondering, other than trespass, were there other criminal acts committed, like property damage or somebody assaulted or threatened or anything like that? I didn't really get to hear any detail on that.
Yeah, I'll give you what I know for sure. And then in terms of the types of arrests, I would defer to the City of Olympia press conference that's on their website, because Acting Chief Jelsig goes down very specifically into the charges. But there were around 40 to 45 activists that were in the hotel, and around 30 to 35 houseless individuals that were staying in the rooms. From what I understand, and anecdotally and from direct quotes, the houseless individuals did not consent to participate in that action. They consented to stay in a hotel room. So there was some confusion. So most of the houseless individuals returned back to wherever they were. They had come from originally, some to Deschutes, some to the mitigation site. 4 of them were given referrals to, or all of them were given referrals through the crisis response unit to shelters, and 4 of them did take up that offer on shelters for the evening. I'm not clear what shelter they did accept that referral for, but I know that they were offered services through the City of Olympia staff. So that's what I know. I know that some of the charges were burglary in the first. There was an assault charge. There was a controlled substance with the intent to deliver charge, and some lesser burglary charges. And that's what I understand.
Okay. My second question is, if this may be premature, so this question is very high level, because I read, and thanks to staff for pulling this kind of sheet together to give us a kind of summary of what is exactly what I was interested in after reading their literature and what they were requesting. So I guess my question, which is probably premature, is if this turns out to pan out, meaning they resolve the conflict and 100% cost reimbursement from FEMA in order to fund potentially or reimburse activities, which I understand to be provide the safe opening and operation of, you know, among other things, non-congregate shelters. What best case scenario, what does that mean for us? What can we do with that tool that we think we might have if everything pans out? Is it going out and opening a new, well, I mean, this group was talking about just handing out hotel vouchers, but that's kind of that seems like a very short-sighted and expensive approach. Although, you know, I guess in a COVID situation, it might be what's necessary, but I'm just wondering what it is that this would potentially do for us if it pans out that this funding stream is as potent as claimed. And this might be a Robin question or a Keely question.
So I'm going to jump in. You know, one of the things that we're going to need is, how does FEMA define a non-congregate shelter? Would hotel vouchers be sufficient, and would they reimburse that? Or would it have to be a single structure or a few structures where you have multiple rooms that's dedicated to this purpose? So part of what we need to do is to get clarification from FEMA on what is actually allowed.
I can speak anecdotally to some activities that are occurring in King County. I spoke with one of the organizers that helped set up hotels for vulnerable folks over 65 as per the demands that were listed on that document. And they stated that it's a mashup. It's some of the rooms are paid for, or the rooms are paid for partially by FEMA and with other funding sources. So I've been looking into how they're operating, and I haven't gotten very far yet, but I am in communication with folks operating those hotels up in King County.
Okay, if I don't hear any follow-ups from the board, I will I will say thank you, Keely, and thank you for that report.
Thank
Sounds
you.
like we're on track to flesh this out. Next on the agenda is item 3, which is a review of this afternoon's board agenda, which will be a very quick item since we don't have a board meeting. That meeting was kind of combined with next week. We have Board of County Commissioners and a Board of Health draft agendas for February 9th. So we'll turn to item 4 for today's agenda, the Board of County Commissioners meeting for February 9th. That meeting will be called to order at 2 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Mejia. Approval for the agenda and board meeting minutes from January 26th will be considered by the board. And then at 2:05, we will have a presentation, specifically Proclamation for African American History Month. I'll turn this to the county manager to make
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. On a yearly basis, the board has taken the opportunity to pass a proclamation celebrating the month of February, which is the African American History Month. There is a draft proclamation that is included in your packet, I believe. And please review. If you have any comments, let us know, and we'll make those changes accordingly prior to next week. So I assume the board is interested in pursuing this proclamation. I guess that would be my first question.
Any thoughts on that?
You want a thumbs up or something on it?
Thumbs up, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thumbs are all up. Okay, is that all we need to do then to address that? The board will review the draft proclamation, provide any input back to the clerk of the board, and anything else we need to say about that, Ramiro?
No, in the opportunity for the public, right now, the OPMA issued by the guidance from the governor, they sent an email to last week, suspends the in-person gatherings, meaning the public cannot come into room 280. So we have closed the room for public access, and any testimony will be made available via conference call, via Zoom, and obviously via email and any other type of correspondence the public likes to engage with the board. However, there seems to be never going to be a way as to how we manage this different guidance. Right now, Thurston County has moved into phase 2 as of yesterday, which allows for gatherings up to 25% limitation. So I'm waiting for a clarification from the OPMA, Open Public Meetings Act, to see where we are for those counties who are currently under phase 2, because seems to be a conflict between moving into phase 2 and the proclamation OPMA, they closed the in-person meeting. So, well, maybe they will be opening again for in-person public testimony in front of the board on Tuesdays, but I'm going to wait until the OPMA guidance is provided to us before we change the direction.
Okay, so it sounds like public needs to stay tuned. There might be a change before next Tuesday, but we're just not sure about that.
Probably, yeah. And if anything, probably maybe waiting for 2 weeks to see if the region in which the county is part of, the West region, continues to be in phase 2, because the assessment is every 2 weeks. So most likely wait until the end of the following week to see where we are in terms of the moving into phase 2.
Okay, so that kind of connects to the next item, which is opportunity for the public to address the board, and Ramiro kind of laid that out, that it won't be in person, most likely for February 9th, but there are other opportunities to address the board.
That's correct.
Okay, and county manager update, any follow-up items there on item 2?
So we'll try to follow up with any public testimony you receive via Zoom meetings or a conference call or email. This morning you received a letter from a citizen, Mr. Pettit, asking questions to CPED, the director. So I don't believe there is a response that I need to do at this point. So I will follow up with Josh Cummins to see how we can respond to the questions that Mr. Pettit stated in his letter.
Okay, anything from the board on all of those preliminary items?
I do have one question, I guess. I'm just trying to think of the rationale about we're opening up to phase 2, to where we can do quite a few things, but yet I realize we're trying to get an opinion on that, but I just wondered what the rationale is that if we're having 25%, we can't have one person at a time or something come in. I just question that is all. Doesn't seem like very open government is all. But I guess it's going to yet to be addressed, sounds like.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it seems like the answer has been just that OPMA has been operating on a separate track all along the way, and they've kind of kept up with each other, but it hasn't always lined up perfectly because they've handled that on a separate track. And I just feel like, yeah, they sometimes get out of sync in a sense, but we'll see.
Yeah, and that becomes a challenge, to be honest with you, but those are the conditions for now.
I know there's a bill in the legislature to try to clean this up a little bit, see how that goes. Okay, so consent items, we have 3. 2 of them are financial vouchers, and the substantive one is 3A, involving the treasurer's office, and the treasurer has been patiently waiting here on the call. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning.
This item is described as write-offs of uncollectible personal property taxes. And Ramiro, you can introduce it.
Yeah, let me frame the issue, and then maybe Mr. Gadman can follow up with any particular gaps that I may have missed. So under RCW 8656.56.20, authorizes the county legislative authority to retire what we call uncollectible personal property. The treasurer's office has come on a yearly basis to ask the board to retire what is considered to be uncollectible. For your proposal today, there is 7 mobile homes. They have been destroyed, and we will not have not been able to collect the taxes associated with those structures. That amounts to $2,125.25. There are also businesses and business accounts, a total of 26. We have not been able to collect property taxes. 24 of those have been closed and no longer in existence, and 2 have filed for bankruptcy. The total of the 26 businesses is $11,947.35. For the total amount of $14,072.60 is what the treasurer's office is requesting the board to retire for as an uncollectible property, impersonal property. So, Jeff?
Yeah, thank you, Ramiro, and thank you, commissioners, for your time this morning. Ramiro, you covered it very, very well. Basically, what these are is situations where there are no assets to be able to take. And so, for instance, the mobile homes, there's no physical asset anymore to be able to attach the taxes to. And in the case of the businesses, it's the same thing, that the personal property that they had is gone. And so we can't attach the taxes to it. We don't have the opportunity to attach these unpaid taxes to any real property because the business is not owned by the underlying, the property owner and the business name are different. So basically there's no physical assets here to attach. And so this is an annual routine that we need to go through, but the legislative authority does need to declare these taxes uncollectible so they can be written off and the books get cleaned up.
Questions on this item, Commissioner Mejia?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards?
I wonder if the treasurer couldn't give us an example of how something takes place so for the public, so they'll know why we're writing this off, how maybe somebody went out of business, somebody died. Could you give us an example of how one of these trailers or one of these issues brought about that we're gonna forgive?
So in the case of a lot of these mobile homes, they are mobile homes that were at the end of their life. And you can see the tax amounts are very, very low. So they had minimal value to begin with. In a lot of cases, they weren't even being lived in. You know, with the assessor being on a 6-year inspection cycle, a lot can happen in 6 years. And so these mobile homes that are at the end of their life, sometimes they just eventually just, you know, the property owner will just dismantle them, or they just collapse. And so then it's at the point where we are actually going through the distraint process, where the property owner said, if we can get a hold of the property owner and say, oh, that fell down in the back 40, you know, a year ago. A lot of times we can't get a hold of the owner because they've moved on. And in that case, there's no asset to attach and there is no owner to contact. In the case of the businesses, I mean, who knows, there's a myriad of reasons why businesses will go out of business. Sometimes it is poor management, sometimes it's a poor economy. They just can't attract enough business. In some of these cases, the personal property that is owned or was owned has been moved into another business. So the property is still taxable, but not taxable under this particular business name.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
This reminds me, if I'll tell a quick story of a situation where it wasn't a tax, but it was a vehicle registration, and I was moving from California to Alaska, and the last weekend I sold my motorcycle, and I didn't have time to go to DMV and deal with it. So, you know, I figured the new owner, you know, would want to register his motorcycle and would register it with the state of California. And several months later, I got a registration notice that I owed the registration, and I you know, and so I called the DMV from Arctic, Alaska, and said, what do I do? And they basically said, well, whoever you sold it to didn't register it, and unless you file an affidavit under penalty of perjury that the vehicle has been destroyed, dismantled, you're going to continue to receive the registration fee. And I said, till the end of my life? And they're like, yes. So I'm like, okay, I made a mistake, but that can't possibly be satisfied due process, that the penalty for my mistake is to pay a registration on something I don't own for the next 60 years. So we got to do something about this. And they're like, nope, sorry. So I got lawyerly and sent a letter to I think it was the Ombudsman office or whatever, and Secretary of State, wherever I was directed, and, you know, threatened a lawsuit in the District Court of Alaska that they could come up and defend. And I never heard anything more about it. I never got a letter saying I didn't have to pay that, but I never got another letter saying I owed. But it was just a weird thing where I don't know where that motorcycle went, but the state wanted its tax fee registration.
You know,
well, hopefully they wrote it off like we're about to do for some of these trailer owners.
So a friend of mine, when we were in our early 20s, had sold a car to a guy in Seattle. Very similar. The guy didn't register it. He had a letter about 7 or 8 months later. The guy had racked up $5,000 in parking tickets in the city of Seattle, and they wanted Kelly to pay it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, well, it's good to get these things cleaned up, is the moral of my story. Thank you, Jeff. Any other questions? We'll move on. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you all for your time. Happy Tuesday.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
3B and 3C are voucher lists. Any items that the commissioners wanted to address there?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, very good.
And we will add the amount for the January 18th voucher list for next week.
Yeah, thank you. Item 4 is community planning and economic development. It's the 2021 Thurston County Heritage Grant Awards, which we've previously reviewed, and we have Jeremy Davis here to answer just any lingering questions, I think we covered this. We covered this not only in an agenda setting, but in a separate briefing, I believe. So I would imagine we're up to speed. Anything new to report, Jeremy?
So there's two items in here for your consideration. You may recall is one for you to consider awarding the grants for the 2021 process, which is amounts to $45,000, and also extending previous awards, one for 2019 award, another one for 2020, the extending the date in which they can use the grants. So there's two elements on this on this request before the board. And I believe Jeremy walked you through in detail what the awards are and the request for extensions for those two grants, which they have been affected by COVID-19 emergency and the inability to carry on with the program in which the grant was allocated to.
All right, good morning, commissioners. Again, Jeremy Davis with Community Planning and Economic Development. Yes, sir, we did run through these during a briefing in mid-January, and we talked about these last week. So the proposed grants for 2021 amounts to 9 grants of $5,000, totaling $45,000. And with the COVID-19 extension, County Manager Chavez just mentioned, for the 2020 grants, it would amount to $35,162 approximately. And for the 2019 grants, it would be $6,646.
Great. Any questions for Jeremy inside?
No questions for me.
No, sir.
Okay. Well, I know I had a chance to report on this at one of my meetings, and I know the folks down in Rochester are very excited about the gate school item. So this will be a good item, and thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you. Have a great morning.
Item 5 is emergency services, Medic One Fire Agency COVID-19 high probability unit contracts.
Yeah, thank you, commissioners. This request for you is this contract's really in the event of if the need arises. And again, this is this is a surge capacity for the EMS transport services that has sometimes become overwhelmed during the pandemic. There are 12 Thurston County fire agencies in this contract, and each one of those sometimes needs a surge capacity. That includes call for persons under COVID-19 investigations, confirm COVID-19 patients who require medical treatment, and to transport COVID-19 related patients and those who are positively screened for influenza illnesses. So, and also to support agencies undergoing the COVID-19 outbreak in their workforce in order to maintain services in their district in response zones. So, and again, this is a preemptive contract. We expect to be this contract up to $240,000. We may not materialize that expenditures, but that's the ceiling of the request. And again, this will be on the on-need basis. And Kurt is here to answer any questions, so elaborate on what I just stated.
Kurt, you want to add anything now or just take questions?
Yeah, I was going to say, good morning, Commissioners. Kurt Harden, Director of Emergency Services. The only other piece I would add in is this contract will also allow us, if it's activated and implemented, to go to FEMA to request reimbursement for COVID-related expenses.
Questions for Kurt from the commissioners?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
Is there the county manager said there's a $240,000 limit or something there. Is that needed to be included in this motion? That, I mean, we're just saying the approved dollar amount, but it's kind of broad.
It is, and we say up to $240,000, and the reason is because it could be, if we implement this contract, it could be much less, and if it starts approaching that upper limit, we have to implement the contract. We're working with a number of fire agencies, and we start approaching that $240,000 limit. We can always come back to the Board of County Commissioners and ask for additional authorization. The other piece is that I think traditionally we put in the 10% variance, but at the same time, we have we can always come back if we see the need to be greater. We can always come back and request additional authorization.
So maybe I think Commissioner Edwards is requesting if we can add the up to $240,000 on the motion.
Okay.
Yeah, we can certainly do that, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
I believe that's what you're asking, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So we'll,
Okay,
we'll
I-
add on the motion up to 240,000, just to give you a sense of the contract amount.
Okay.
I had the same question as Commissioner Edwards, so I have no further questions.
Okay, very good. I don't have any either, so thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.
Item 6 is Public Health and Social Services. 6A, waiver of competitive solicitation and amendment to extend the Thurston County Chamber Foundation Thurston Thrives contract for 1 year, 2021.
Yeah,
Shelley's here, and Chris Hawkins is listed as our contact on this item.
yeah, thank you, Commissioners. The county have a contract with the Thurston County Chamber Foundation for Thurston Thrive Coordinating Council, which the county participates on with $40,000 on a yearly basis. This particular request is an amendment number 2 of the original contract, which started, I believe, in 2019. That was the initial contract. It was for $40,000. The board extended through amendment number 1 in 2020 for the same amount of $40,000. This request is for you to consider amendment number 2 for the same amount of $40,000. So in the last 3 years, obviously, the total cost of this contract needs to be increased, and that amount is also increased to $120,000. And again, it's just to continue with the same contract partnership that we have with the Thurston County Chamber Foundation. Chris, Shelley?
Thank you, Ramiro. Chris Hawkins, Thurston County Public Health and Social Services Program Manager. I think Ramiro covered it pretty well. The one thing that I would add to that is that we did make some changes to the scope of services for Thurston Thrives support for this coming year due to a new area of emphasis for Thurston Thrives to address health disparities and achieve health equity through more attention to Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, and things that we identified in the community health needs assessment that we conducted in 2019 that informed efforts in 2020, but those will continue and be increased in 2021. So there are a few changes noted in that scope of services, which shows as Exhibit A2.
Somebody's having a phone going.
Questions for Chris? Commissioner Mejia.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Edwards.
No, sir.
Nope, I do not either. Thank you very much. Thank you, Shelley. We're good to go on item 6A. 6B is also Public Health and Social Services, 2021 Public Health and Social Services Request for Proposals. Tom Webster, Social Services Program Specialist, with us.
Commissioners, this is a yearly request from staff for the board to authorize going with a request for proposals to receive applications soliciting project proposal for funding from the Federal Home Investment Partnership Act, Affordable Housing Fund, which is the House Bill 2060, Homeless Housing Fund, the House Bill 2163, State Consolidated Homeless Grants, CHG Fund, State Housing and Essential Needs, HEN, and to fund a Human Services Fund, which is the HSF. As you may recall, all this conversation and all this funding source has been consolidated under the Regional Housing Council. The Regional Housing Council and the commissioners who serve, represent the county have been informed of this. I know that Commissioner Mejia is new to the council, so this may be news, but this is, we have consolidated all that into the Regional Housing Council. The board members have been aware, And again, we are requesting for authorizing the request for proposal to secure applications. Tom?
Yeah, also, thank you for that. In addition, we're also going to put out or requesting to put out an RFP for the City of Tumwater's Community Development Block Grant Program. City of Tumwater will receive the CDBG funds this year, although we put out the RFP on their behalf. And then those proposals will come to the board in June for your approval. We're also requesting we work with the Veterans Assistance Fund and Treatment Sales Tax. We'll put out an RFP at the same time. We have a joint application process, so we use an online application system. So we're also requesting to issue RFPs for the Veterans Assistance Fund and Treatment Sales Tax as part of this RFP package that we are putting out. The funds that are, I will also note that the funding amounts for the Housing and Homeless Services that are listed in the AIS are estimates. We're still waiting for final federal and state budgets. And so those are estimated amounts based on what we received last year and what we anticipate this year, but those may be adjusted based on final federal and state budgets. And that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Tom, a matter of clarification on the CDBG, which is Tumwater's year, those applications will be reviewed by the City of Tumwater. Those will not be reviewed by the Regional Housing Council.
That is correct.
Okay.
Tumwater City Council will make those recommendations on what projects they want to fund, but those recommendations will come to the board for final approval before we submit them to HUD.
I do have a question, sir.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm kind of curious about this motion because it doesn't say what it is at all. I mean, I'm sympathetic to a short motion because I have to read them, and maybe that's why you did that. But for the public to view this and wonder, what are we doing here? Do I want to bid on this, or whatever it is? Isn't that a little bit vague? It's to cover kind of what, all the social service issues we deal with, or housing, or I don't know. It just seems a little vague, and if it's a little vague to me, I can imagine a citizen looking at it and saying, well, what's this all about?
Yeah, good point, Commissioner. We'll put additional detail on the action before you consider it next week.
Oh, okay, and then I hope you don't retaliate against me because I have to read it. So try to keep it short. I can see where it's very complicated.
The county manager will never retaliate against the commissioner.
Okay, I'm just trying to clarify that for the.
Oh, that's a good point. We'll add additional details for next week's.
I will specify each individual because there are 3 or 4 requests for proposals. So I'll specify the different requests for proposals that we're specifically asking for your approval.
Okay, Tom, try to keep it brief, will you?
I will.
We can add all this.
Yeah, that's okay.
Commissioner Mejia, anything on this?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I basically had the same as Commissioner Edwards. It seemed a little scanty for what we're actually including in there, but okay, thank you, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that takes us to item 7, Public Works. Item 7A is contract award for fish passage enhancement. And Jesse King is here. Ramiro, why don't you orient us to
This is, Commissioner, this is a follow-up to the authorization the board provided to go ahead and issue a bid proposal to secure bids for 3 steel bridges related to the fish passage enhancement program. Those locations were in Latigo Street at Spurgeon Creek, at the Chehalis Western Trail, Gate Road, the culvert replacement project, and the proposal is for you to consider awarding this contract to Contact Engineering Solutions of Westchester, Ohio, for a total of $459,648. Staff also requested an additional 10%, 45,965 to address any unexpected activities during construction. So the total will be for $505,613. The staff received only one bid, I believe, on this particular proposal that was received on January 16, 2021. And again, if I can give you additional perspective before staff get into the details, this has been a strategy to expedite the projects related to the fish barrier removal program. The fish barrier removal program has a specific window during the summer as to when we need to conduct construction activities. That's what we call as the fish window. So in this approach is to secure the structures ahead of time. And when the time comes, we just secure a bid proposal for a contractor to go ahead and place on site the new structure. This approach has been extremely effective in the last couple of years, which has allowed staff, public works, to meet all the constructions in any given year within the fish window that is allocated to the construction. That's the premise of this. Jesse?
Hello, Jesse King, Thurston County Public Works. I think Romero covered it pretty well, so if you have any questions, let me know.
Questions for Jesse from Commissioner Mejia?
I feel like, it's a shame that we only received one bid, and they're from Ohio. I always, prefer companies from our area. That way it can go into our economy, but if we only received one, but that was just my comment.
Yeah, it's interesting in the past. So Big R would bid on our bridges. So we would get Big R and Contact to bid on our bridges. Well, Contact bought out Big R. So now we're only receiving one bid.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, my question is very similar to Commissioner Mejia's. Is with only one bid, I mean, I know we have fabrication companies here locally. Did they just not know about the bid, or? And I mean, if you took into consideration we're working on an environmental benefit project here, seems like we're increasing the carbon footprint to ship 3 bridges from Ohio out here. So are we being counterproductive in the end? I mean, is this where we're following all the rules, but then once we do it, we're stuck with it, that type of a thing? I'm just curious. It seems like one bid bothers me. I'm not saying anything's wrong. I'm just saying it bothers me.
We advertised in the Olympian and the Seattle Daily Journal, and we also advertised on the Builders Exchange website. So the information was provided accordingly. Okay. So I don't know why we only got one bid, but that's what we're going with. So.
Okay, thank you, Jesse.
And Commissioner Edwards, yeah, you've been consistent on this because last year was the same concern because in this particular steel bridges, it was only one bid, I believe. So yeah, from what I'm saying, I wish we can have 10 bidders. That is hard to formulate a response as to where any particular business does no bid, doesn't provide a bid on any particular public works contract. We'll continue to do the best that we can to advertise the bids. But the bid checked all the requirements. I believe the low bid meets is within the range of the engineer's estimate. So really, that's the only parameters staff is going through before they can provide a recommendation to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Jesse, is this a company then that's provided grid bridges in the past?
Yeah, I know of Contact. They're a national company. The fact that they bought Big R, I believe it's actually Big R staff that had put the proposal together and will be doing the construction for manufacture of the bridge. So it's basically a Big R bridge. It just has Contact stamped on it.
Right. Yeah, as Ramiro pointed out, I remember this conversation exactly from last year, and I guess this is a pretty specialized type of a item that maybe not everybody will produce. So, okay, thank you. That's that item. Then let's go to 7B, which also involves Jesse and the contract award for Gate Road culvert replacement.
So I'm happy to report the staff is requesting the board to award the contract for a prefabricated contract precast concrete culvert to Fowler Construction Company of Tumwater, Washington. So this particular request is for you to consider $103,441.75 contract award, which includes 10%, $9,394.71. Additionals from the low bid, which it was $93,947.04. And again, on this particular request bid proposal, we only received one bid as well, and it's a local company who met the requirements of this request.
Any questions on this item from the commissioners?
Yeah, well.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
The dollar amount that we're spending on both of these projects, did we get any grant money, or is that coming out of REIT, or what's the breakdown on that?
On the bridges for the Spurgeon Creek project, we received a $2.7 million grant through RCO, the Brian Abbott Fish Passage. And we have county matching funds with REIT of $300,000. And then for the Gate Road project, it will be completely funded through REIT.
Oh.
I believe that we have applied for a small construction grant, but we haven't heard back on that one yet for the culvert. So.
Okay, so we got money from the RCO. What? 2.7 million. What? I don't see where that pencils out exactly right there.
Well, maybe I can help because what Jesse is stating is the total cost of the project. When you consider awarding at this point, it's just the fabrication of the bridge.
Yes.
So there's other activities that goes along with the construction that amounts to that higher dollar amount.
Okay.
So this is just a very specific request for the prefabrication of the structures.
Okay.
Did that make sense?
Yep, makes sense. Thank you.
Commissioner Mejia, anything on this?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, and I don't have any either. Thank you very much, Jesse.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to complete this agenda prior to a break. The next three items are related and relate to the climate mitigation plan. And they're the three items that we discussed at our planning session on Friday. So hopefully commissioners are well familiar with what they're related to, but why don't we just get a brief overview for the public who might not have been tuned in on Friday.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. Following up on the discussion that you had this past Friday, related to the climate mitigation plan, there was a decision of having three different actions for you to consider. One is for you to approve a resolution declaring the a climate crisis in Thurston County. Item 8B is for you to consider approving a resolution accepting the climate mitigation plan in partnership with the jurisdictions within Thurston County. And also, last item, the 8C, is you for to consider approving phase 3 of the implementation is a linear local agreement with Thurston Regional Planning Council, TRPC, and authorize the county managers to sign that interlocal agreement. That is, I believe, the cost for that is $37,000 as a result of the county's participation on that, and we do have funding for that as well. So Chris and I have been ping ponging and the resolutions. I think we have a pretty good draft that I will be circulating for your review, hopefully today or tomorrow but certainly before the next Tuesday. That will give you an opportunity to review the language of those two resolutions. Item 8C does not have a resolution. It's just an action to authorize phase 3 of the in-local agreement. Chris?
Ramiro has covered this well. Chris Hawkins, again, program manager with Thurston County Public Health and Social Services, and I've been a staff representative to the steering committee that worked on the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan. And I think commissioners are very familiar with the plan and its development over the last couple of years in partnership with cities of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater. And this set of resolutions really relates to accepting that plan and moving forward to its implementation, and forward to bring that forward to you next week.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Questions for Commissioner Mejia?
No questions at this time.
Commissioner Edwards.
The only thing I do have a question. Are we anywhere near, because we have so many trees in Thurston County, are we anywhere near a carbon neutral position? Has that analysis been done?
That's a very good question, Commissioner Edwards. My understanding is that the sequestration or storage of carbon part of this plan is one that got brought into it largely due to public comment and participation in the plan. And it's a welcome addition and helps us to meet the targets of the plan. I don't believe that part of it has been analyzed fully. It's part of the work of this next year to get a good handle on how to measure how much carbon is being stored in our community and how we can increase that through agriculture and forestry practices. And but we're glad to have that carbon storage part of addressing climate change in the local plan. So that's what I have as a partial answer to you on
Sure.
that.
Well, that's fine. Our discussion a week or so ago generated some comments that came to me, and that's what I'm asking about. Even things like solar panels, they have a capacity of generating X, whatever X is, but in reality, in Western Washington, you know, sun doesn't shine that much here compared to what it does over in, say, Yakima or something like that. Are we taking those type of things into consideration as well? That even the wind generation that just went up in the south part of the county, the wind only blows about, I don't know, 40% of the time. So the generation is based on, the potential is based on 24 hours. So are we factoring all of that in as we go through this? So we, you know, are we given full credit or 40% credit, or how does that work? Is that something that we're going to be discussing as we go along?
Yes, I think that there are adjustments that are made for our particular location here in Thurston County to how much actual energy can be produced from those cleaner energy sources. I can get back to you with more detail on that. CarePC staff is not with us this morning, who worked on the sort of computations and estimations of that, but we can get some answers for you on that, and it will be probably worked on in much more detail as we get into implementation of the climate mitigation plan.
And then just one final thing was, it was pointed out to me from that discussion we had a week or so ago that all of our submarines and big Navy ships and stuff like that, they're all nuclear powered, and they just put a pellet in every 7 years or something like that. So I just want to make sure that we take everything into consideration as we move forward. And I know there's some folks that it's not highly thought of, and maybe for good reason, but I'd like to have more discussions about that type of thing if possible. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. I just would say that some input I got after our discussion was something I hadn't really thought about when we were discussing the necessity or the value of having a resolution of the climate crisis. And it was pointed out that, you know, a lot of really important policy changes are being considered and implemented at the state level. And having local jurisdictions pass these types of resolutions kind of keeps the pressure on our state legislatures and the governor's office to continue to prioritize. I mean, the Clean Energy Transformation Act was a huge step forward for us last year. And there's a number of bills that will continue to advance and make it easier, frankly. Will make it a lot easier for us at the local level to meet our goals. So we need to keep that pressure on the state legislature. They have a lot. They're operating on a bigger scale in terms of trying to clean our energy grid and incentivize buildings and transportation. So I'm very supportive of that as an additional basis for what we're doing here on item 8A. Thank you, Chris. We'll look forward to that. The last items are our standing items for commissioners to report on board work sessions, county manager to review our schedule for the week following February 9th, and then we will adjourn. It is now 10:28, and I'm going to propose a 12-minute break, and we will reconvene at 10:40 to take up the Board of Health agenda at that point.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Welcome back. We're resuming our Thurston County Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session for Tuesday, February 2nd, 10:41 a.m. And we are up to item 5 on today's agenda, which is a review of the Board of Health draft agenda for next week's Board of Health meeting, February 9th, 2021. 3:30 is the scheduled time for that meeting. We will call the meeting to order and have an approval of agenda and meeting minutes from January 12th. It looks like proclamation and presentations is just in there as a holder. There are no scheduled proclamations or presentations. We will have opportunity for the public to address the Board of Health, which has in recent meetings been lengthy. And just as a preliminary comment for my seatmates, Shelley and I have met to kind of develop the Board of Health agendas, and the last couple of months we've kept the agenda somewhat short, with only one sort of, I'll say, unrelated to the pandemic item, because we've had significant public comment and then we've had significant commissioner discussion about COVID-19 related items, and we want to maintain that as being as an appropriate place to have those discussions. So we have tried to not load up the agenda with other items. So in this agenda, we have one department item identified, which is called Vector Response Pest Rodent Management. This was suggested to me by a citizen that reached out with some concerns. So I asked Shelley, what might be the appropriate way to address those concerns through the Board of Health agenda. And so we've developed this item, and Sammy Berg is here as well. He's the contact. And I guess I'll let Shelley kind of frame the topic and let the board know what's going on here.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Menzer. You framed it very well. This is in response to constituent concerns and questions that have come to the board as well as to our department. And Sammy Berg manages our vector response. And so he is going to be presenting on this item and is here with us today to provide an overview on what his presentation will entail. Sammy?
Good morning, everyone. And definitely the intent was to try to give you a little more background information on the issues around rodents and rats in particular, and those impacts on...
Hey, Sammy, can you state what do you do for public health?
Oh, sure. I'm a senior environmental health specialist. I supervise the food and environmental services section, which primarily are the restaurant inspectors, but we also do food, school inspections, pool inspections, and a slice of what we do is deal with vector, and mainly that's bats and rabies, but part of that's also rodent complaints and things like that. So this was seen as an attempt to basically give you a quick overview of those issues, but also primarily to identify that there is no active rodent control program that the county runs, and that's primarily where there tends to be some frustration on the constituents' part, is their desire or hope that we can do something for them, either because they're either the property owner or the neighbor who has the abandoned house or whatnot, that we can force them to do something to make the problem go away. And the short answer is we don't have a program, we don't have resources to do that beyond education. And so it reverts back to more of a property management thing, just like carpenter ants or fleas or any other kind of home pest would be. It's on the residents to take care of, and we're happy to talk about it, but we don't have a rat squad that can come out and assist. So that's the kind of the 30-second preview of the 5-minute conversation I was going to have.
Could I do a little bit of a follow-up on that? What does vector response mean? I guess is that
vector,
business or?
It's the term, it's a public health term for anything, essentially any animal or insect that can transmit a disease to humans. So like West Nile virus, the vector is in the mosquito and the crow interactions that they have. Fleas are the...
Okay, that makes sense. Good.
Yeah.
I just didn't know the term. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Commissioner Mejia, anything to ask about this item in terms of its scope and what's going to be presented?
Nothing to ask. Thank you.
Okay. So the person that I talked to was a property manager who basically said that who'd been working in Thurston County for a long time and said that the rats are escalating. I'm not exactly sure why, and that the problem in commercial, apartments that people are renting and residences and businesses is escalating. And so I was kind of wanting to know, is that true? Like, what is the problem? What is the situation? What does the county do? And what could the county do if it wanted to invest resources? What would be approaches that maybe other jurisdictions that have been more aggressive have taken if we wanted to consider that? He also, I talked to him about the education kind of approach, and he basically said, well, if that's kind of where we're at, then could we beef up the education and have, he said, I think I could organize groups of property managers and homeowners associations to reach out to the public and help with your education efforts. So there was kind of an offer from the public on that, if we're going to kind of focus on an education approach. So having an overview of this topic was kind of my goal. So thank you.
Okay, and I have worked with a couple of different homeowners associations where they've had kind of a more widespread problem versus just one or two homes. And we've talked at the neighborhood scale, and I've done that kind of presentation, and happy to do that. The main challenge then basically is just a lack of funds, essentially. And we have the basis closest we have to any kind of surveillance as far as the numbers. Basically, I've got some numbers of the complaints that we receive, and that has been pretty stable over. I looked over the last 5 years, but certainly rats have been a problem in Thurston County for well over 20 years. But if you go back earlier, we haven't had that kind of problem. Usually we had more the field mice and the house mouse kind of deal. So rats are relatively new to the county, but they have been here for the last decade to two easily. And it's throughout the county. It's not urban or rural or north or south or anything. They're here to stay. And so the efforts by homeowners, especially the broader efforts by homeowners trying to work together, that's going to be the key.
Okay, thank you, Sammy. We'll look forward to that. Okay. And that's really it for the substantive agenda. We'll have the Board of Health members related activities, and then health officers report and directors report, which have been lengthier these last couple of months, obviously, because of the hard work of that group and lots of questions from the board. So we'll probably be lingering on certain COVID-related topics there. Shelley, anything to add to what needs to be discussed here at this agenda setting?
No, sir, you covered it very well. And yes, Dr. Abdelmalik's health officer report, as well as my director report, will cover COVID response and our vaccination plans, as well as other items happening in our department.
Commissioners, anything to wrap up the Board of Health agenda for Tuesday, February 9th? Romero, go ahead.
Yep. No, you go ahead, sir, and then I'll go ahead.
Before you move away from this item, just to let you know that we're going to be transitioning the functions of the clerk of the Board of Health to Amy Davis. She's currently serving as the clerk of the Board of County Commissioners, so we're going to be consolidating those functions with Amy. So just like to give you a perspective on some of those changes.
Is that going to start next month?
We're currently transitioning, so I think for next month we'll be all fully implemented the transition.
Lydia will be present as clerk of the Board of Health for this February meeting next week.
Great. All right. Thank you, Shelley. Commissioner Edwards, something.
I guess my concern is that we need to, at some point, have some time, and I don't know that this is the time, maybe the upcoming board meeting is more appropriate, but I'm just concerned that we're not doing enough to get the word out to our citizens and it's more about wellness and preventive possibilities to keep people from getting this COVID virus. I know Big Pharma does not like a 10-cent fix. They'd rather send you, a $100 bill fix than a 10-cent fix. And repurposing certain medications that are available out there. The problem is, it seems like nobody wants to talk about it from an official perspective, because I certainly can't make a recommendation to citizens that they do X or Y. But I wonder if there isn't a way that they can come up with some solutions to help their loved ones not come down with this. I know we're talking about masks and social distancing and all the things that we are talking about, but we're going to be dealing with this thing for years to come, I'm afraid. And I don't see that we're going to get proper vaccinations to everybody soon enough and all that to keep people from getting this. So I'm just wondering at what point we can have a more in-depth discussion on that. I don't know that now is the time, but because we're talking about agenda issues for the Board of Health, I don't know, Shelley, do you have anything to add to that? I mean, I guess some of my concerns have been relayed to you possibly.
Yes, thank you so much, Commissioner Edwards. You are absolutely right that the non-pharmaceutical interventions, what we refer to as our best prevention tool for things like COVID, as well as other viral illnesses, such as physical distancing, hand washing, face coverings, those are all very effective at preventing the spread of many different kinds of illnesses. One of the things that our health officer will include in her health officer report at the Board of Health is our flu surveillance report. And we are very interested and encouraged to see that our flu cases have been virtually non-existent thus far this year. So we believe that that is related to how people have been following our public health prevention guidance. So that is true. That's going to remain to be our best tool. Vaccinations also are very key and proven to be very successful in our history of public health in preventing very serious pandemics and other viral illnesses and disease. I know also that you were interested in what kind of pharmaceutical treatments are available to prevent COVID, and one of those is a drug called ivermectin. And Dr. Abdimalik is happy to share more information about what potential medications and research there is out there in terms of treatment. But at this time, what we know is that vaccinations and our public health mitigation efforts are really the best tools that we have.
Just to follow up on that, I know if my loved one contracted this disease and died, and then I found out later that, gee, if we just would have been told that if you took aspirin, twice a day or something, I'm just using that as an example, that it means nothing. But if we found out later, gee, the government knew all along that it might have helped or something. I just wonder, we're so cautious that I kind of come from that background of you got to take care of yourself. You can't depend on the government to take care of you all the time. And so I hate to see information stymied to the public because it isn't authorized by the CDC or the World Health Organization or something. I hear about issues that are being, the situation at least being dealt with repurposed drugs, I guess is the best way to put it, that were never intended. And all around the world, they're using those. And it seems to be solving a problem, but we're almost like we're afraid to talk about it. The news won't talk about it. The government won't talk about it. And it's almost like we're afraid of big pharma, because we talk about it, they're going to come beat us up, so to speak. And so I'm always looking for a way to help without spending, you know, a lot of money, you know, Theraflu or something. I don't know. I've heard that that doesn't work for this. Well, that's fine, but at least somebody ought to try it. So without me getting into passing on information that might not even be correct, and thus exposing the county to liability, my concern is that somehow we get the public made aware that, I don't know, if they take vitamin C every day, they have a less chance, you know, the resistance is better. And I just think we need to talk about some of these things, because I think we're going to live with this for quite some time because of the unknown factor that we're dealing with, especially the fact that it seems to be the virus is adjusting itself to become more toxic, or, you know, it's modifying its structure as it moves on. So that's all. My concern is that we're kind of dealing with the here and now, but in reality, we're going to be stuck with this for some years to come. And we can't just shut down schools every time we get a little spike, or shut down businesses, that kind of thing. Our economy can't continue to function that way. And our kids, I mean, the biggest thing I'm hearing that, you know, kids need to have that social interaction that the schools offer, for an example. And I just hate to see this ongoing disruption. I'm trying to get ahead of it. That's kind of where I'm at, so.
Yes, I understand. And again, just we are dealing with a brand new coronavirus we have never seen in our lifetimes or our history. And we have known about this for just a little bit over a year. So there are people all over the world that are researching and studying this this SARS-CoV virus and COVID-2. And I think that we're going to continue to see research, and we're going to learn things as time goes on. Many drug treatments, including vaccines, take a long time before we can see the effectiveness and they can become safe enough to be approved. So we are certainly not hiding anything that we know here at Thurston County Public Health. We continue to follow very closely all the emerging research that is out there, and happy to share more about what we do know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mejia, anything on this topic?
No, for me, no.
Okay, me neither. Let's go on to, thank you, Shelley.
Thank you.
Let's move to item 6, proclamations and awards.
Good morning, Amy Davis, Clerk of the Board. The one proclamation included in your packet is to proclaim the month of February as African American History Month, and is included on the agenda for the 9th, as the meeting this afternoon is canceled. And the proclamation scheduled is attached to that as well. And that is all for proclamations.
Questions for Amy? Hearing none, let's go to item 7, advisory board.
Yes, there is one new application today from Jake Yancey for a farmer position on the Agricultural Advisory Committee. The committee interviewed the applicant at their January meeting and unanimously recommend he be appointed. That is the only new application for review. So I'd also like to check on the status of the other 6 applications and see if there's any further information you'd like on those applicants prior to appointment, or if you've had a chance to review and would like to move forward. And if so, we can process AISs to be included on the 16th, if you'd like.
I think the proposal was to move the rest of them forward if the board, was going to touch base on that this morning. Did the board, I'm comfortable with the proposed reappointments. Did the board have any concerns or questions about the applicants?
No, sir, I'm good.
No, sir. I actually went to the last Agri-Tourism Advisory Committee and I met Mr. Burden Rutledge and Ms. Tarman, and I think they would all be great.
Perfect. Well, let's put all of them on the February 9th agenda. And then we'll hold on Mr. Yancey until the board's had at least a week or so to review that. I haven't seen that one yet.
So just to confirm the direction of the board, we'll bring AISs for the reappointments to the Agri-Tourism Advisory Committee, to the Civil Services Commission, to the Historic Commission, to the Surface Water Advisory Board, and for the Thurston County Chambers. You took that action already.
Yes, that was last week.
That was last week, the last.
Yep, I think that covers it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then let's move to PIO check-in, item 8.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brian Dominique, Public Information Officer with the Board of County Commissioners. I don't have a lot for you today, just one thing. The electronic signature policy has been revised and is currently moving through the policy review process. Megan Porter, our Public Information Supervisor, says that that the hope is to have this policy in front of the board by the end of this month. So more to come on that. On that, I don't have a lot, so pending any questions, that's all I have.
Questions for Brian? Commissioner McGeehan?
No questions.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Okay, me neither. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, now our favorite part of the morning, legislative update.
I'll take that as a compliment, but thank you.
That's where I get out my stack of overlapping bill trackers and try to make sense of what's going on in the state legislature.
Yeah, so let me walk you through the report. I'm not going to be going through all of them. I'm just going to go through some particular items. I'm going to start with on page number 4, on the bottom page of that's House Bill 1144. And what I've done is we have coordinated with CPID, and they have provided their perspective on how the board may consider a position on this board, on this bill. House Bill 1144 removes the ability to establish a standing to petition to the Growth Management Hearing Board by practicing orally and in writing in the matter of when it was before a city of a county. Removes the ability for the governor to authorize a person, an organization, to bring a petition before the Growth Management Hearing Board. Adds the ability for a person or organization to establish a standing to bring a petition before the Growth Management Hearing Board if the person or organization owns property within the boundaries of the city of a county planning under the GMA. So that's really has related to this item. I think the staff is having a neutral position. Also, there's a companion Senate bill, which is 5314, which outlines similar issues related to individuals who can probably file a complaint before the Growth Management Hearing Board. At this point, the ramifications of this bill, continue to be part of the conversation. So the suggestion will be to take a neutral position on this. So I'm going to move on. If you stop me, we'll have a conversation, but I'll assume that you're okay with that. Next will be page number 5. And we have those House Bill 1201 and Senate Bill 5149. And this is related to the foundational public health services and the regionalization of public health. WASAG has taken a position of a concern on those bills. And I know the board has requested to take the time to reflect on that position. So I'm asking if the board has had the opportunity to review those bills. My suggestion at the beginning was to oppose these bills because the regionalization of the public health brings a great deal of concern. A great deal of concern because as I in just my point of view, is how a state-wide board or regional board can make decisions when we have a case of measles on an elementary school here in Thurston County. It seems to be a little bit detached to that. It also brings the health officer under this bill to be hired by the state. So in somewhat, we lose control, local control of that. So that's my 2 cents. They have provided to the board. And again, you want to have the opportunity to review this in detail. So I'm asking what is the position?
I guess if I just asked the board if Commissioner Edwards opposed to begin with, Commissioner Mejia and I wanted to remain neutral. I'll just say I still prefer to remain neutral. I had a conversation with Representative Bateman about what the arguments were in favor of this bill, and I see pretty strong arguments on both sides. Frankly, I'm just not decided or sure if it's good policy, and it's my intent to continue to stay neutral. But Commissioner Mejia can certainly change her vote if she so desires.
I'm staying neutral as well.
Thank you.
And I'm going the same along with the Association of Counties. So
very good.
Next, I have a House Bill 1220 that is related to supporting emergency shelters and housing through local planning and development regulations. That seems to be a very good bill to support because it allows, and again, flexibility through updates the housing goals and the Growth Management Act to include planning for and accommodating affordable housing. Requires jurisdictions to address moderate, low, very low, and extremely low income housing and the housing elements of the comprehensive plan. It requires jurisdictions to address racially disparate impacts and displacement in the housing element of the comprehensive plan. I believe this bill, that's what I'm hearing from the board, in supporting affordable housing and also perhaps eliminating some of the disparities when we provide housing to BIPOC individuals in our community. So next bill that I have for you is House Bill 1233. And this allows a county to provide for limited areas of more intensive rural development and to determine what development and redevelopment is consistent with the character of the existing area through local development regulations. Allows a county to set and, when needed, to primarily serve the needs of the existing population or to connect two separate areas to expand the logical outer boundaries of the limited areas in the rural area. So what it does, this bill, is to allow additional development in the rural areas. As you can see, WASAC is supporting the bill, and CPED is suggesting to remain neutral on this particular bill.
Any chance I could ask a question about that, sir?
No, please do. Stop me when.
Could you give me an example of what you think the intent is? Is it like down at Rochester and Grand Mound, for an example? Is that what they're talking about? Where they don't have a municipality or?
Yeah, it's related to the areas of more intensive rural development, also known as the LIMERs under the GMA.
Okay.
Limited areas of more intensive rural development. This particular bill, what it does is a major change to the current more restrictive rules that we have in Thurston County. Thurston County has established policies around the limited areas of more intensive rural development that will need to be revised if this bill passes. But this is not a pressing local community issue. And in fact, many of the local communities may have concern about expansion of the rural areas as they see pristine. So that is probably the context of this.
What's that number again?
That's House Bill 1233.
1233?
1233. And a companion bill similar to that is Senate Bill 5275.
So on the WASAC Legislative Steering Committee meeting, this was cruised through. I didn't understand it at all. So I actually asked a follow-up question and asked Paul Jewell to clarify some of the details. And even the details were super complex. I couldn't make heads or tails of it just based on what I was being told, because it just does all kinds of little miscellaneous things that, you know, a thumbnail sketch was not going to get me up to speed. So I support the neutral position that CPED's recommending, because frankly, you know, even after a follow-up, I couldn't get a good sense of it.
Yeah, that's my recommendation, Commissioners.
My notes say that it's a piece of legislation.
It is very complex. Suggesting to remain neutral.
That's fine with me.
Next, House Bill 1241. And this is, let me get to that point. This is related to planning under the Growth Management Act, amending areas of the code of the RCW 9058080 and 9058080 as well, 81. Let me read the amendment, which is in section 1. And it states, excuse me, by no later than December 31st of every year following adoption of the comprehensive plan after January 1st, 2024, and annually thereafter, each county and city planning under RCW 3670A4040 with a population of at least 7,500 or more shall create an annual work plan for implementing its comprehensive plan. The work program shall describe the development regulations and the non-regulatory measures, including actions for acquiring and spending money in support of the work program, which are the consideration of the upcoming year. As you can tell, there's a lot of concerns about this, because yes, it's another regulation for us to provide yet another report to the state as to how we're going to be managing the implementation of the legislative authority by approving the comp plan amendments. So in a way, it takes, from my perspective, it takes a little bit away of how you, the board, will dictate how you want to implement the changes of any particular comp plan amendment that you have approved. So that's my 2 cents on that one. Next, on the top page number 6 is House Bill 1258. And this is concerning the operations and authorizations and permitting micro enterprises home kitchens. And this is, on the surface, it appears to be given a little more flexibility to micro kitchens, meaning any individual who has a home kitchen can have a commercial license to sell food. So how I read this bill, if you look from the larger perspective of, it seems to be adequate to incentivize businesses. They can probably provide, particularly in these conditions of the pandemic, for anybody who can probably sell food. But if you dive down a little more into the details, create a big issue related to the public health as to how we're going to be implementing the process, approval, and also making sure that whatever product is produced at those micro kitchens meets the public health requirements. So what's awful has taken a position to oppose this bill. So I want to make sure that, at least I give you my perspective, I agree with the organization's positions to oppose this bill, because again, looking at the 30,000 foot level perhaps makes sense, but get into the details, it will be extremely complicated as to how we're going to be able to permit and how we're going to be able to guarantee for those for the members of the public who consume the products of the micro kitchens are going to be meeting public health requirements. That's it on that. So House Bill 1260, and that is 39. And this is related to expanding the marijuana market. And there seems to be a little bit of a concern related to this piece of legislation, because it appears it takes the local control over the ability to regulate retail sales of cannabis. It would require Thurston County to amend the existing zoning regulations for marijuana to allow the expansions of retail sales where Thurston County currently allows it. It really provides a more open market, but as you have heard in the past, even with the current conditions of the retail of cannabis products, the county only receives a portion of the sales tax associated with that. So this particular bill, by expanding that the retail of cannabis market in Thurston County, we're going to have to probably permit and manage that. The benefit is not going to be there for the county in the long term. So the position is at this point is concern, not necessarily opposed, is concern.
Wasn't there, Ramiro, and again, I wasn't really on the board during all the marijuana, zoning regulation debates that kind of got wrapped up before I got on the board, but isn't there a concern that certain counties are shutting it down, thinking it was going to push it away into other counties, and basically, so for example, just to use an example, Lewis and Mason County could say, we're not going to allow it, hardly anywhere. That'll push it all into Thurston County, so we don't have to deal with it. And then Thurston County, and then it's like an unequal market, because we're more open about the market, then we get a disproportionate number of these businesses. And is there an argument, I guess, I don't know if that's where this bill is coming from. I haven't heard anything about it, but it is what they're trying to do, create a stable rules across the board so counties can't play off each other and shove these things off to their neighbors. Is that what's going on here, or?
Yeah, that might be the intent, Commissioner, that perhaps the state wants to have a wider rulemaking in terms of permitting. But still, even if that attempt, the legislative authority needs to take an action to take as an option. So I don't think it's going to be this bill that doesn't obligate in a particular county to be part of this particular law. I think it creates allowances to increase the retail. This is my read of the bill. But it's still the legislative action by each county has to enact as to how you like to pursue this.
Well, if we don't have to take action, then why would we be concerned about?
And the concern again is the additional work that we're going to have to do. And in the long term, more sales taxes will be generated as a result of additional retail, and the county is not going to receive any benefits from more allowance on this particular business. And that's just my point of view.
I mean, I don't know if you need official vote. I'm neutral on that because I just don't know enough about it. But.
Can we put on there that we would, I don't know, would we support it? I'm always concerned because we get about 1% of our sales tax revenue or something from marijuana. I mean, it's a joke, really. Mm-hmm. If we would get, I don't know, 20% or something reasonable, but we're not allowed to make adjustments to it, are we? I see we could talk to Jessica Bateman.
I know Wasac takes positions where they're conditional support, if they get certain concessions. I mean, you can take any position you want, I guess, but in theory, we don't have the power to rewrite.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. What I'm hearing is a neutral position?
Yeah.
Thank you. The next bill is House Bill 1310. And this is just the related to public safety bill. There's a lot of public safety bills that are going through. But I'd just like to take this opportunity to bring this to your attention, not necessarily as a specific item, but it's just I have made an effort not to bring any public safety related bills to your attention because we have, the Association of Sheriffs and Law Enforcement. They have specific positions on the many different bills of public safety related to public safety, and our county sheriff is the president of that organization. So, my proposal is really to remain neutral on any public safety unless you really have a specific bill that you would like to address specifically. And this is, I want to bring this to your attention because I believe Commissioner Mejia wanted to, or was requested to testify last Friday. And anyway, so I just love to open this conversation because this particular bill became to my attention via Commissioner Mejia. I want to be respectful of her time and the opportunity to have a conversation with the board. And then what this bill does is establishes a standard for use physical force by peace officers, modifies the criminal liability protections for homicide or use of deadly force committed or used by peace officers. It's very comprehensive. And again, I just want to open that for discussion.
So I guess I'll just lay it out. I was reached out last week to testify on this bill. I will be honest, I didn't know much about it. So I let Romero know what were the classifications for a commissioner to go and testify on a bill. And he said he would bring it up at this legislative update. I did have the time to review the bill, and I've had time to talk to several law enforcement officers. I always like to see how how it affects the people that are actually involved in the process. And just from reviewing it and just from what I heard back, I think we should remain neutral.
That's fine. I'm fine with it.
It's okay. I don't know the bill very well.
I don't know it that well. I haven't heard from the sheriff or anything either.
Okay.
I'm always fine remaining neutral if we don't know, if we don't feel clear.
And I think it's more issues related to this bill if we dive down, but yeah. House Bill 1331, that is related to provides that development on an early learning facility qualifies as a development activity and provides exceptions for the impact fees associated with that development. And gets to the point of prohibits a local government from imposing an impact fee on early learning facility developments greater than those imposed on the comparable zoning size. You know, I know that CPID is suggesting to remain neutral. Perhaps I have a different take on this, perhaps to oppose this particular bill, because even if it is a facility, because the purpose and intent of any impact fees is to address the impacts related to any particular development, whether it's the schools or public safety response, roads, and everything else. And that's the only tool the local governments have to address the impacts on in a particular development. In this case, it's going to be an impact no matter how we are going to see. So I know the CPID has suggested to remain neutral. My suggestion is to oppose this bill.
Can you repeat, Ramiro, so I don't understand? What is it doing? It's so saying the bill is trying to exempt this type of a...
Exempt from impact fees any early learning facility developments in the county.
Are schools exempted?
Yep.
So it's treating them like a school.
In a way, that's my take. So, and that is, that is, I believe, an impact. So.
Commissioners, anything? I'm inclined to stay neutral, actually, myself. I mean, I think there's some logic to that. I mean, just hearing it superficially.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, just hearing that superficially, I can see both sides of it too, so I would like to look more into it.
Okay.
Temporarily neutral there.
Yep, got it. House Bill 1335, next page. And this is related concern to review and properties modifications and record documents for unlawful racial restrictions. This is something that the board has taken an action last week to address this particular matter. And I believe that anything that we can have in terms of a legislative action to eliminate any language related to racial inequities is a good bill. And it does, and also this particular bill allows counties and cities to use revenue from real estate excise tax to find the covenant and deed restrictions to eliminate any discriminatory, racially charged covenants on plat. So the position is to support this. Bill 1337. This is related to accessory dwelling units. And it's interesting because this particular proposal is really outlining what you just took an action on passing the accessory dwelling units here in the county last year. So there really is not necessarily an impact to the county, so the position is to remain neutral.
I guess, isn't this one very similar to House Bill 1232 as far as, I mean, it's trying to create affordable housing is the bottom line, isn't it?
Maybe, because all those bills perhaps have some interrelation in between. As my read on this one is just dealing specifically with accessory dwelling units.
Right, but I mean, isn't that kind of the goal, to create affordable housing for folks? And then at some point, we'll have adequate housing, and then we can actually have affordable housing.
So what I'm saying is the board has already taken an action on this without the state law telling you that we need to do this.
Yeah, okay.
Romero, in the WASAC legislative bulletin that went out, the paragraph regarding this bill says, HB 1337 proposes to pay local governments for additional ADUs constructed if they enact specific regulations intended to encourage more of them. Counties who implement the laws qualify for a $10,000 grant per ADU built over the average number constructed in previous years. Counties can utilize the funds any way they choose. So even though we've done the incentive, wouldn't we want to support the idea that we get paid $10,000 for every, if we've increased our average ADUs? I mean, why would that not be something that we want?
I'm sorry, WASAC is supportive of this bill, Commissioner?
They don't say that. They just have a paragraph describing it. I think they do support it because the bulletin tends to highlight ones they support.
I guess I missed the $10,000 grant in my review, so.
Okay.
Check with CPED, because I would imagine that if our policies that we've already implemented create a net gain over previous years, and I don't see how it couldn't, we stand to get some money out of this from what WASAC is saying. So you might want to double check that.
Okay, so for now, I read that the board wants to support this?
Yes, I would like to.
Yes.
I try to move quickly because I know that you have many items on the agenda still.
Yep.
Sorry. And moving on to the last page, page 11 of 11. And Senate Bill 5220, that concerns to tax exemptions related to activities for salmon habitat. And 22, let me get my notes. So I'm trying to catch up on my notes, I'm sorry.
I don't know how you
What it does is exempt salmon recovery grants provided to nonprofit organizations for retail, from the retail and use and sales tax. I think it's an incentive for those organizations who wants to get grants that is related to provide increased salmon habitat. So I believe that anything related to that is a welcome legislation, so much just to support that. Moving on to Senate Bill 5235. And this is related to increasing housing unit inventory by removing arbitrary limits on housing options. So what it does, this prohibits counties planning under the Growth Management Act and cities within such counties from prohibiting primarily renter-occupied housing units on the same lot. There will be accessory dwelling units with exceptions. So you may recall that was probably some of the conversations that you had when you were considering the ADUs, where this particular legislation is if somebody's renting a particular dwelling, that can be considered as an ADU. So, and that probably seems to be the piece of this legislation. And CPID is considering for you to have a position of concern. Let me get to that.
But this is also so we have an adequate inventory of housing, isn't it?
It could be considered such.
I guess you just can't ever know enough about this many pieces of legislation, I don't think.
You know, my suggestion on this will be to remain neutral, commissioners.
That's fine.
I'm fine with it.
Senate Bill 5269, and that is related to requires all Growth Management Act planning jurisdictions to allow for multifamily housing units in areas zoned as single-family residential use within the UGAs. Requires certain parking units per lot size or dwelling units within the UGA. Includes the general value increase of properties conversions, those properties having converted to have a tax credit. In this particular, I recommend for you to support this piece of legislation. And again, that goes with your suggestion of affordable housing. I think it provides more latitude. Next is concerning the replacement of shoreline armoring, the Senate Bill 5273. What it does is requires a person replacing a marine bulkhead to use the least impacting technically feasible bank protection alternative for the protection of fish and life. There is very prescriptive as to what could be some of those alternatives, which includes remove the structure and restore the beach, remove the structure and install native vegetation, remove the structure and to control upland drainage, remove the structure and replace it with a soft structure constructed in natural materials. So it goes on and give you so many different options to some of the activities that somebody can use. I think this is a good bill to support because it provides flexibility for the citizens who want to replace bulkheads with that sensitive environmental component.
So this is all about replacement?
Yeah.
Right, yep.
Does soft structure, does that mean wood, like natural wood, or does it mean rubber?
Of natural material. So I will assume the wood is a natural material. That makes sense?
I know the Planning Commission is dealing with this topic right now. I'd like to hear what somebody says from there.
This one was up last year and it didn't pass, and I was.
Yeah, good memory.
Well, I remember this one because I was supportive of it. It was
and we
related to a program that I serve on Alliance for Healthy South Sound, and we supported this. And
I believe, I believe the board supported this bill last year.
yeah, I think it's got, you know, it's got the right flexibility. It just makes people walk through their options and pick the option that meets their needs for whatever they're trying to do to protect their property, and put it the most environmentally friendly of the options that meet both needs. So it's a good way to balance those factors, because shoreline armoring is a real problem, especially in our region.
Okay. Moving on to Senate Bill 5275. This is related to the House Bill Review 1233. So I got the position of the board on that. The next bill 5287, that really doesn't apply to Thurston County, because this is a potential legislation that applies to counties and cities over 2 million population. Senate Bill 5306, and this is related to concern local salmon habitat recovery plan in the critical areas. And WASAC is opposing this, as well as in CPED is taking a neutral position. And what it does is change the section. So the Department of Fish and Wildlife regarding conservation and protection of the, I can't remember, I don't know how to say this word, anadromous fisheries in critical area utilizing the guidelines developed by RCW. But it's very prescriptive, because now the Department of Fish and Wildlife must adopt a conservation and restoration guidelines in order to assist counties and cities in the preservation and enhancement of fisheries. This guideline must identify priority marine, nearshore, as well as stream segments and riparian habitat. So that's really is very prescriptive. What I understand of this as additional regulation to what we need to do. So in hearing how the board has weighed in all this, CPIT has a concerned position. WASAC opposes that position, I believe, and I will recommend the board to oppose that as well.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Moving on to Senate Bill 5314. And this is, that's the last one that I have for you. It provides a definition for best available science and modifies the best available science to be used and consideration to be made in designing and protecting critical habitat. Allows planning jurisdictions to develop a written record to demonstrate that the best available science has been included, and allows planning jurisdictions to retain the experts and witnesses when challenges are brought before the Growth Management Hearing Board. There is a lot of information related to this bill, and I concur with CPIT's position to remain neutral at this point.
Sounds good.
Ramiro, I had two bills I wanted to ask about.
Yeah, please do.
For the board. One was a letter the board got from the Agricultural Advisory Committee asking us to support Senate Bill 5045 regarding meat inspection, creating a state program instead of the USDA program. So I don't know if the board had reviewed the Agricultural Advisory Committee's letter and had a take on it. I did a little bit of looking at it, and it's got bipartisan support from not legislators from our region, but Democrats and Republicans from, I think, the east side are interested in it. I didn't know if you had a chance to look at that, or if my seatmates have looked at that.
I apologize. I did not recall reading that letter.
I don't think I got it either.
Maybe we can address it. I'll circulate it to Ramiro, and we can address it next week, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. That will be great.
The other bill was HB 1348. It's strongly supported by WASAC. It relates to keeping Medicaid benefits for folks in local jails.
Yep.
For 30 days. And the average length of stay for a person in a local jail is 25 days. So it would capture the majority of folks when they're going to be right back out anyway. And that loss of benefits creates all kinds of problems and expenses. And I know if our Director of Public Defense were here, I'll speak for him to say that I think he would want us to strongly support that. Probably John Thunheim as well, I'm guessing. But I would ask my seatmates to take a look at it, and maybe we should support that. WASAC legislative bulletin says they strongly support it because of the financial impacts to the counties.
Let me make a comment, having worn another hat at one point in time running jail, is it never did make sense to me that an inmate would lose their benefit and then we're going to turn them loose shortly, and then they have to struggle and just go through that whole process again. So I'm with you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
100% on that.
So maybe this is, thank you, Commissioner. Let me just read out loud what the bill really does, if I may.
Yeah.
So housing individuals in jails is an expensive services the county performs. One of the most expensive aspects of this service is provision of the physical and behavioral health care. The statistics is that 50% of those in jail have serious chronic health conditions. 65 of those in jail have major mental health issues. And 53% of those have serious substance abuse, as well as 49% in jail have coexistent mental and substance abuse. Another eye-opener on the statistical data is 80% of those in jail are in pretrial status, waiting for resolution on their case. The suspension of Medicaid benefits and the result, I'm sorry, the Medicaid benefits are suspended by federal law requires that an individual on Medicaid benefits be suspended while they are in confinement. This means that the jails are responsible for the provisions of the medical needs. The suspension of medical benefits hinders the ability for us to properly provide financially and otherwise to those individuals who needs. So what this bill does requires the Healthcare Authority to seek a waiver from the Federal Department of Health and Human Services to allow Medicaid benefits for those in confinement and to remain active for the first 30 days of their confinement. So thank you. I think this is a good piece of legislation, Commissioner.
Thank you. That's all I have. Okay, so I guess we're done with that item. Thank you, Ramiro. And then we've got about 16 minutes. We're up to a briefing, public hearings, decisions pending. Anything there?
No, sir.
Okay, then let's go to Commissioner items 11-1, dangerous dog follow-up.
Yeah, this is just a brief follow-up conversation. Katie presented the item to you last week related to some complaints. We have looked into the details again to the complaints we have received. It's 2 different complaints from 2 different property owners related to the same 2 dogs. And a recommendation that will be circulating attached in your packet is a draft letter for you to consider declaring dangerous dogs. We're not going to go through the process at this point, the suggestions from the staff, for you to consider potential dangerous dog. I think there is enough evidence, at least from my point of view, to go and for you to consider declaring a dangerous dog. I was listening to the conversation last week, and Commissioner Edwards was asking, are we going to be able to hear the other side of the story? Because you're right, we always need to hear the other side of every story. So this particular proposed letter gives the property owner who owns the dogs, I guess it's the mom and the son of the lady is the one who owns the dogs who lives in the same property, is to give them 10 days to appeal and provide their side of the story to the board. That's what this letter does. So I will be circulating again for your review and final signature because I believe the individuals affected by the accident or the incidents related to those 2 dogs are eager to know where the board is going to be standing on this. Katie, you'd like to add anything?
I have nothing further to add, but thank you.
So you'd like us to review the letter that's been provided and then give you kind of our feedback on
yeah,
it?
and if I may, as soon as feasible, because there is a great deal of expectations about those individuals who have submitted their perspective on the attacks. So.
Okay.
I have
So,
a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Will a copy of this letter also be sent to Ms. Madison and Ms. Delaney?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the code triggers, once we designate, it's kind of just based on a prima facie case, sort of, is there sufficient evidence, if true, then that sort of shifts the burden to the dog owner, then they can ask for a hearing in 10 days, and then we would hear both sides, like a little more informal manner.
Right.
So.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Let's go to item 2, ERP project status and finances.
So this is providing status to the ERP, that's enterprise. I can never remember the acronym for this, but Robin can probably give you a project status of that, and also a status on the upcoming financial elements that you may consider taking an action on this to fund this project. Robin, should be quick, hopefully.
Yes, good morning, commissioners. I'm looking to see what ERP stands for, because I too, it is Enterprise Reporting Program, I'm going to venture. And this briefing paper, I did not spell it out. So we wanted to give you an update on where we're at with the ERP. We are wrapping up contract negotiation. I'm going to even step back from that. As you know, the ERP is the system that will replace our current financial system, payroll system, budget system. It will include a contracts module, asset module, and our current systems, particularly Munis for finance and Eden for payroll, are pretty much end of life. And rather than continue to limp along and pay additional costs for upgrading those systems, especially Eden, which will soon not be supported any longer by Tyler, we proposed to the board, and the board has approved, going through the purchase of a new ERP system. We were right on the brink of negotiating the contract. We had a successful bidder when the pandemic hit. So we paused this process for a while, but this year, given that we have a better understanding, I wouldn't say a perfect understanding of where we're at financially, you added money to the budget for us to move forward with the purchase. We've been negotiating with the successful bidder, and we are just about ready to bring a contract for the board's approval for the ERP with Sierra Cedar for the Oracle system. And the documents that I've given you are our best estimate currently on the price.
That's like $1 million a year. Is that what you're talking about?
It's roughly $1 million starting in 2023. The estimate this year for 2021 is 1.7 million. In 2022, we estimate we'll spend just over or just under 4.5 million. 2023 will cost us about 828,000, because in part we will have to maintain Munis and Eden for at least one final year, and then ongoing costs are estimated to be roughly $445,000 a year after that. The implementation cost in the first 2 years is what we need to cover. And I've given you a copy of a briefing from January 2020, where our proposal was to issue bonds to pay for the implementation cost of the ERP and to implement our new permit system that will replace Amanda. We estimate that the cost of the bond payments will be $752,000 a year, with the general fund impact of that being $436,000. We briefed you in January of 2020, just over a year ago, and the board gave us a green light to proceed with the bonds. What we would like to do, the third document that you've been given, is a copy that is an example of the resolution that you have passed in the past regarding the issue of bonds. And what this resolution does is it specifically outlines what the bond issue would pay for, and it authorizes the assistant county manager, me, to execute the sale of the bonds when the time is right. You'll notice that this example was to issue bonds to pay for the flex unit, and the time was never right for that. It gave a 2-year window for me to do that. And as I said, you know, we never did issue the bonds. So we allowed this to expire. And if we were ever to want to go for bonds for the flex unit, you would need to do a new copy of this. What I'm recommending to you is that at the time you authorize the award of the contract for the ERP, you also adopt a resolution that will authorize the issue of bonds. And the plan at this point in time is that we would probably issue the bonds this fall, and that we would pair those up with the issue of bonds for any other major projects that you might authorize. And we're also reviewing if any of our current bonds can be refunded. But I would ask you at the time that we authorize the contract to also authorize the bond issue that will pay for our large IT projects. So that's a whole lot of information in a very brief time. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
What did you say, the ERP, what did that stand for? What's that acronym?
I think that it is an enterprise reporting program.
Could it be enterprise resource planning? I don't know. I'm to be honest with you, I remember we had a briefing on this long ago, but I don't remember any of the particulars. When would we move forward with further discussion on this?
So we are hoping to bring the contract to you within the next few weeks.
Boy, I mean, I'd just like to be brought back up to speed on the whole thing, I guess, is my concern.
Page 2 of the memo you circulated says enterprise resource planning, just like Commissioner Edwards said.
There you go.
Yeah. Good memory, Commissioner. Enterprise resource planning.
I don't have a good memory at all. I'm stumped on all the particulars on this thing. You're baffling me with too much.
So this is, and again, just a quick update, and we'll follow up with specific items where the board will have yet another opportunity to have a conversation on this. At this point, we're not asking you for any particular action.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, does that cover us, Ramiro?
Yes, sir. Now we have a few minutes. With all due respect, I don't have anything on the public testimony. With all due respect, maybe limit the commissioner items that you may have.
Yes, we'll have Thursday check-in to deal with any commissioner items. So let's just go right to our executive session. How long was projected for that item?
I'll say probably 15 minutes. Is that correct, Robin? It won't take that long.
Okay, we'll go to a 15-minute executive session.
Yeah,
then.
and if you can read the RCW, state the purpose and intent, the length of the executive session, and I will ask Brian to remain on call because you need to come back and formally close this work session, the agenda setting.
Okay, at this point, the board will go into executive session pursuant to RCW 42.30.110B to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of increased price. Building availability is the specific topic. Commissioner's action may follow. We'll come back into session after 15 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Rob, let us know.
Should we turn